I was thinking the other day about, your body and everything, because it is amazing, isn't it? How it works.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Does the brain control you, or are you controlling the brain? I don't know if I'm in charge of mine.
Nor do I.
There's a surprise.
People who go to study philosophy usually do so because they want to get the answer to the big questions, the existential questions, the questions whose answers will tell you how you should live your life. After you study philosophy for a while, you realize that there is no such thing as the answers. But there are answers. Every philosophical question has several answers, and some of them are good answers. You can then pick up the answers that seem most right to you, and they can help you manage your life and have a satisfying and happy existence. There are, however, some philosophical questions that defy good answers, and one of them is the question of the freedom of will. Practically every philosopher tries to answer this question, and substantiate their answer by relying on the philosophical worldview. In other words, show how it fits with the solution to the other philosophical questions. But when you go through with the answer to its logical conclusion, at least for me it always ends up being unsatisfying. It either doesn't fit my lived experience, or doesn't integrate with the explanation of how other things in the universe work, or doesn't feel like what you think freedom of will should be like, or simply tells you that you have no free will. Eventually, you end up asking yourself what is freedom and what is will, and what kind of answer would actually satisfy you, and you realize that even those questions are frustrating. So this is a subject I don't like to think about. Last year, I watched Sam Harris talking to Dave Rubin on the Rubin Report, and part of the discussion was about Sam's view on free will, or lack thereof. I watched with interest because Harris is a neuroscientist, so I thought that maybe he'll have some original insights into the matter. But I quickly realized that the talk was going over the same points that philosophers have been discussing for millennia, and there was nothing new there for me. So I zoned out, but I noted to myself that maybe I should pick it up later. Because there is a question that I have for the philosophers who hold Sam's position, and maybe as a neuroscientist he can give me another perspective on it. So now I'm returning to it, and I want to present Sam Harris with my question. Now, Harris wrote a book about this issue, a book which I did not read. But I did watch these 6 videos on YouTube, in which he discusses the matter. That may not sound like a lot, but together these 6 videos amount to 6.5 hours. 6.5 hours of listening to Sam Harris intoning about that subject that I don't like to think about. I didn't get an answer to the question I want to ask, and I assume that this means that the book will not provide an answer either. So I'll just go ahead and ask directly. As mentioned, Harris does not believe that we have free will. I'll let him present his arguments.
Now, the popular conception of free will rests on 2 assumptions. The first assumption is that each of us was free to behave differently than we did in the past. If you could rewind the movie of your life to some moment 10 minutes ago or 10 hours ago, 10 years ago, you would be able to proceed differently than you did. If you chose A, you could have chosen B. If you became a firefighter, you could have become a policeman. You had chocolate ice cream, you could have chosen vanilla. It certainly seems to most of us, most of the time, that this is the universe we're living in. The second assumption is that each of us is the conscious author of our thoughts and actions. So that the part of you that thinks and perceives and experiences your life in the present moment is actually the author of your thoughts and choices and subsequent behavior. Now, the problem, unfortunately, is that we know that both of these assumptions are false.
Right, I think that's presented well enough, and there's no need for me to elaborate. In the end, we hear Sam claim that we know that this belief is false. In other words, that this traditional notion of free will is refuted by current scientific knowledge. So what do we have then?
The first problem is that we live in a world of cause and effect, and either our wills are determined by a long chain of prior causes, and we're not responsible for them, or they're determined by some random influences, and we're not responsible for them. And no matter how you turn this dial between the iron law of determinism and randomness, this notion of free will doesn't make any more sense. There's no way of combining chance and determinism that makes sense of free will.
This is a common materialist view. The universe is made entirely of matter, and matter obeys natural laws and cannot act otherwise. So either the universe moves in an entirely deterministic fashion, or there is some random element. I'm guessing it takes the idea of randomness from quantum physics, but Epicurean philosophers said essentially the same thing 2000 years ago. They philosophized that the universe is made of atoms of matter, and the atoms all move in a mechanistic fashion, but there is also a random element that makes them sometimes swerve a little, for no reason. This is how they explain the existence of free will, but Sam is right that this is not a satisfying answer. Neither the idea that I am caught in a deterministic system, nor the idea that I am controlled by random chance, make me feel like I have free will. To say free will, we are going to have to suggest another possibility. Harris doesn't acknowledge that such a possibility exists, and that leads him to his conclusion that there is no free will. One of his arguments is that we do not choose the circumstances by which we are brought into the world.
From the perspective of your conscious mind, you are actually no more responsible for your next thought than you are for your birth into this world. You have not built your mind. And in moments where you seem to build it, where you finally take the reins of your life and you decide to acquire knowledge or learn a new skill, the only tools at your disposal are those which you've inherited from moments past. No one picks their parents or the society to which they were born. No one picks the moment in history in which they live. No one picks their genes or the environmental influences that determine the structure of their brain. You are no more responsible for the exact structure and state of your brain in this moment than you are for your height.
So our existence, and who we are, is foisted upon us, and that's already taking away a big part of our freedom. However, I would point out that this is not enough to show that there is no free will. When we talk of free will, the question is if we are free to act within the circumstances we are thrown into. As Dan Dennett puts it in his talk with Harris, the sailor can't control what the sea will be like, but he can control the boat. Harris, however, does not believe that we control the boat. He believes that everything we do in our life is predetermined, that the position of atoms in our body at the moment of our birth already determines all the actions that we will take until the day we die. Or there could be some random element, which saves us from determinism, but over which we have no control either. So, to him, our life is determined by the circumstances we are thrown into, and there is no freedom to resist.
Thoughts just emerge in consciousness. We are not authoring them. That would require that we think them before we think them. If you can't control your next thought, and you don't know what it's going to be until it arises, where's your freedom of will?
This is Sam's main point. Thoughts just pop into our mind, and we have no control over the process. The thoughts are born on the unconscious level. We become aware of them only after they were formed, and they drive us. So, not only did we not program our brain to be like it is, we also don't control the thoughts that our brain thinks and the decisions that it takes. We are just observers of the process, as if we were watching it on a movie screen. At no point, according to Harris, do we have any ability to steer the boat. So how can we say that we have free will? Again, there is nothing new here, nothing that philosophers haven't said before. So why do I think that it might be interesting to put my question to Sam? Because of this.
And consciousness clearly is not in the driver's seat. For instance, there's now a tradition of doing experiments where you give people a very simple choice, just to push one button, the left button or the right button. And they can push whichever they want, whenever they want. And the only other task you give them is to watch a special clock where they can discriminate time in a very fine-grained way. And they just have to notice what time it was when they finally consciously made up their mind. What you find, and what the first person who did this, Benjamin Libet, did, a physiologist who had people hooked up to EEG while doing this, but it's since been replicated with functional magnetic resonance imaging and even direct recordings from the cortices of surgical patients. You find that the time at which a person consciously thinks they have consciously decided to push the left button versus the right, comes some seconds often, at minimum half a second, sometimes up to 5 seconds or 7 seconds after the brain has already decided. You can tell what the person is going to do before they know what they're going to do by looking at the brain data.
This is knowledge that those past philosophers didn't have, and it gives Sam a different perspective on the matter, which I would like to challenge. So, finally, I am now going to go ahead and ask my question. My question is this: what about what is known as the train of thought? Indeed, Sam, I agree with you that thoughts just pop in the mind, seemingly out of nowhere. But once the thought exists, it can stay for a while, and develop itself. Maybe all decisions are made in the subconscious before I am aware of them, but the decision my subconscious makes is surely determined by where I took the train of thought to. If I had gone in another direction somewhere along the line, the decision could have been different. And so, this is where I feel like I do have control over my thought. Actually, I shouldn't say that I have control over my thought. I am the thought. I am driving myself, going according to my own logic. Of course, there are a lot of distractions, like outside stimuli or random thoughts that can come out of nowhere, but it is still possible for me, the thought, to maintain myself for a certain period of time. And this is where, maybe, free will does reside. Let's look at it from a different angle. As I understand it, when we look at the brain through our instruments and see a thought, it appears as electric currents moving in certain paths, causing certain neurons to fire. What I am suggesting is that when there is a train of thought, it is the thought itself that determines which path it will take in the brain. To put it differently, it is the content of the thought that determines which neurons will fire. I am interested to know, Sam, how does that idea square off with our current knowledge of the brain?
Now most people think we have a strong subjective experience of free will. And the problem is just that we can't map it on to physical reality. This, I think, is an illusion. I think we actually do not feel as free as we think we do. This relies on us not paying very close attention to what it's like to be us. If you pay attention, you can see that you no more author the next thing you think than the next thing I say. Thoughts simply appear in consciousness.
I disagree. I don't think that this is our subjective experience. If it was like that, then every thought would appear momentarily, and then be immediately followed by a thought that is completely disconnected to it. That's not what happens. Some thoughts are extended, and go down a certain path. A train of thought is not controlled by randomness, nor is it deterministic. It has several routes it can travel, and it chooses one of them. Also, Sam, what do you mean by saying that I don't author the next thing that I think? Are you suggesting that I am something different from my thought? Are you suggesting a soul? Evidently you don't, because elsewhere you rule out the existence of something like a soul, or a self, or a subject. But it seems to me that you are inadvertently falling into the trap of implying its existence. Whenever you make the argument that we are not the author of our thought, an argument you make often, it sounds like this is what you are doing. When I say the word I, meaning myself, there are two things I might be referring to. First, it can mean the human organism that I am. Secondly, it can mean the consciousness of this organism at this moment. Now, the organism also stores memories, which I, the consciousness, have access to, and that makes me feel like I am an entity, a subject that has a history. But I agree with Harris that there is no subject, no entity that exists in my body like a ghost in the machine. What I am is just the current consciousness, and the memories are thoughts within this consciousness. So let's examine these two versions of I, in light of Sam's argument. If we are talking about the organism, then I am definitely the author of my thought. The subconscious is also part of the organism, and the thought was created in it, so I authored it. And if we are talking about the consciousness, then I am the thought, and I am authoring myself. I didn't have control over being created, But once I came to be, I'm steering my way in the brain. I am self-driven, and therefore, to some extent, free. Again, this freedom is very tenuous, as it is hard to keep a train of thought going. So if we are talking about something that I have to decide on the spot, it can be said that I didn't have much control over the decision. However, if we are talking about a decision that I have been deliberating for weeks, then we are talking about an accumulation of many moments in which I had the ability to affect it. And this is where, perhaps, I do have control over my destiny. Alright then, that is my question, and I am interested to know what Sam Harris thinks of this possibility. From you, my viewers, I ask that you help me get Sam's attention to this video. And, of course, tell me what you think about it. As long as I venture into the subject that I don't like, let's have a discussion about it.